We are talking healing after betrayal today. My guest is Dr. Debi Silber. She's the founder of the PBT Institute, which is the Post Betrayal Transformation Institute, and National Forgiveness Day. She started that. And that is annually on September 1st, just so you know. She is an award-winning speaker and a two-time #1 international bestselling author. Her podcast, From Betrayal to Breakthrough, is also globally ranked within the top 1.5% of podcasts. Her recent PhD study on how we experience betrayal made 3 groundbreaking discoveries that changes how long it takes to heal. In addition to being on Fox, CBS, The Dr. Oz Show, TEDx twice, and more, she's dedicated to helping people move past their betrayals, as well as any other blocks preventing them from the health, work, relationships, confidence, and happiness they want most. If you would like to learn more, you can go to the pbtinstitute.com, and you can also follow her on Instagram. Her handle on there is Debi Silber. That's Cebi, and then it's like silver, but with a B. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get into this amazing conversation with Dr. Debi Silber. This episode is brought to you by Peluva. So Peluva, Peluva, those are Mark Sisson's new zero drop minimalist shoe with that distinctive 5-toe design. I have been loving them. I've been a long-time fan of barefoot shoes, and I was very resistant to the little 5-toe articulation personally at first, because just being real, I thought they looked really nerdy, and I was like, oh man, yeah, I love Mark so much, and I get what he's doing, but I'm not wearing those nerdy shoes. And then Brad Kearns, who's also involved with that project, was like, no, Tara, you got to try them. Tara, you got to try them. Tara, just come on, try them. And I tried them, and I kid you not, I enjoy them so much that I actually like how they look now. Weirdly, I can tell. So like the purpose of that 5-toe articulation is so that your toes can move more dynamically. So with other barefoot shoes, like I've been a long time fan of Vivos, and I'm still a big fan of Vivos, but they have just that big toe box, right? Which is awesome. So I didn't really feel like the 5-toe articulation was necessary, to be honest. But as I've worn them, I have experienced how awesome that is. It was actually been quite surprising for me. And I wore them this morning. I wear them all the time, and I'm really, really enjoying that freedom of movement on my toes. So, yeah, Brad and I have been going back and forth. I'm like, dude, I actually love them. And he offered to sponsor the podcast with Peluva and also offer you guys a 15% off code, which I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, I will gladly introduce my people to Peluva shoes. So you can use code Coach Tara at peluva.com, or you can just go to peluva, peluva.com/Coach Tara, and you can get that 15% off discount. Make sure you snag some of the socks while you're there, because you're going to need the toe socks. Okay. All right, let's get into the episode. Okay. So Dr. Silber, post betrayal transformation. I cannot wait to talk about betrayal trauma and everything you've learned about it, and just your whole outlook on what can happen and what to expect after betrayal. To kind of kick things off and set the stage a little bit, can you share how you got to this place?
Sure. Yes. Well, first of all, call me Debbie, please.
Okay.
You don't study something like betrayal unless you have to. So I've been in business 33 years, health, mindset, personal development. I had a really painful betrayal from my family. I thought I did all I needed to do to heal from that. And then it happened a few years later. This time it was my husband. Anybody who's been through that, you're blindsided, devastated, shocked. So that was the deal breaker. Got him out of the house. And I looked at the two experiences thinking, what's similar to these two? Of course, me, but what else? And I realized I never really took my own needs seriously. It was always about everybody else. And I'm one of those people that believes if nothing changes, excuse me, nothing changes. So usually I go to books, courses, something. I couldn't find anything to help me heal. And I had no choice. Like I had 4 kids, 6 dogs, a thriving business. And I was like, I have to get together here. So I enrolled in a PhD program to learn this at the PhD level. Like it was that big that I needed something that big. And I didn't know how I was going to pay for it, manage the time. But while I was there, I did a study, and I studied betrayal, really just to help me heal and to help my clients. That study led to 3 groundbreaking discoveries, which changed my health, my family, my work, my life.
3 groundbreak okay, wow. Yeah, I mean, you might as well, right? Like, you're like, "Okay, I need answers, not finding them, so PhD it is." Okay, so what were those 3 groundbreaking discoveries?
Yeah. So the first was, if you've been through other traumas, everyone's going to be like, "Oh, I get it." I had a feeling betrayal was a different type of trauma. I'd been through death of a loved one. I'd been through disease, but I was like, nope, betrayal feels different. I
Mhm,
didn't want to assume it was the same for everybody. So I asked them, if you've been through other traumas besides betrayal, does it feel different for you? Unanimously, they said it's so different. Here's why: because it feels so intentional, we take it
mhm,
so personally. So the
mhm.
entire self gets shattered. Rejection, abandonment, belonging, confidence, worthiness, trust, they're destroyed. Like when you lose someone you love, you grieve, you're sad, you mourn the lost, life will never be the same. But you don't go back and look at that relationship and start questioning it. You don't lose your ability to trust. You don't question your
Mhm,
sanity. With betrayal
mhm,
you do. So that
mhm.
betrayal is a different type of trauma that needs a very different way to heal. That was the first discovery.
Yeah, just to add on that real quick from the betrayal traumas that have been pretty severe I've gone through, it really impacted my trust of myself. It
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, I just, like, lived in la la land and foolheartedly thought I was living in this, like, amazing reality, and it was all BS, and now I can't trust myself, and I'm hyper vigilant as crap," and, like, all that.
Yeah. And what's
Okay.
even worse is, like, think about it. This was the person you trusted the most. So now, if you can't trust the person you trusted the most, the next part of that is, where was I? How did I not see? How did I not know? So
Right.
if I can't trust the person I trusted the most and I can't trust myself, well, how in the world can I trust in anything or anyone? So
Mhm.
all of trust is destroyed. Here's the thing though. People ask me all the time, can trust be repaired? I say no. Can it be rebuilt? Yeah. It's a big process, but it can.
Mm. Okay, well, I'll let you move to your next one so we don't I could easily just start going off, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And if you
what's
wanna
next?
go back to how trust gets rebuilt, we could talk about that too. So the second discovery was there's actually a collection of symptoms, physical, mental, and emotional,
Mm,
so common to betrayal. It's now known as post-betrayal syndrome. And we've
mm.
had easily over 100,000 people take our post-betrayal syndrome quiz to see to what extent they're struggling.
Wow.
A few things about that. The first thing is we've all been taught time heals all wounds, right? I have the proof that when it comes to betrayal, that's not true.
Mm.
There's a question on the quiz that says, is there anything else you'd like to share? And people write things like, my betrayal happened 35 years ago. I'm unwilling to trust. My betrayal happened 40 years ago. I can still feel the hate. My betrayal happened 10 years ago. Feels like it happened yesterday. So we know we can't count on time. We can't even count on a new relationship to heal it.
Mhm.
Until and unless healing is deliberate and intentional, it will follow you around in your work, in your health, in your relationships. And happy to share some stats if you want to hear them,
Yes, please.
because that would have been an awkward moment if you said no.
Yeah, and, we don't care about statistics or good amazing groundbreaking information that no one else has access to, nah.
All right. So, as much as I'm going to share the symptoms, though, hear these numbers. Ready? Now,
Mhm.
100,000 people plus, men and women,
Awesome.
just about every country. Ready?
Wow.
78% constantly revisit their experience.
Wow.
81% feel a loss of personal power.
Yeah.
80% are hypervigilant, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that before. 94% deal with painful triggers. And if you've
Wow.
ever had a trigger, you know how painful they are. These are the most common physical symptoms. And you're going to see this with the people that you see. 71% have low energy, 68% have sleep issues,
Mm,
63% have extreme fatigue. Their adrenals have tanked. They sleep all night, wake up, they're exhausted. 47% have weight changes. So in the beginning, they can't hold food down. Later on, they're emotionally eating. So common.
mhm, mhm.
45% have a digestive issue. And that could be anything: Crohn's, IBS, diverticulitis, constipation, diarrhea, you name it. The most common mental symptoms: 78% are overwhelmed, 70% are walking around in a state of disbelief,
Mm,
64% are in shock, 62% can't concentrate. So imagine that you can't concentrate, right? You've, let's say, a gut issue, you're exhausted, you still have to work. You still have to raise
mhm.
your kids, take care of your elderly parents, whatever you have going on. That's not even emotionally. Emotionally, 88% experience extreme sadness. 83% are very angry. And that's that same person that could be bouncing back and forth between those two emotions all day long. You could imagine how exhausting that is. I'll just read a few more. 79% are stressed. This one killed me. 84% have an inability to trust.
Yeah.
84%.
Yeah.
67% prevent themselves from forming deep relationships because they're afraid of being hurt again. Big wall goes up, right?
Mm-hmm.
82% find it hard to move forward. 90% want to move forward, but they don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what's even crazier about those stats? You didn't hear me say 20%, 30%, they're super high. This is what I find so crazy. They're not even necessarily from a recent betrayal. This could be from the parent who did something awful when you were a kid. This could be from the partner who broke your heart in high school. So think about this. That person may not know, care, remember, they may not even be alive. And here we are decades later with these symptoms from something left unhealed. The good news is you could heal from all of it, which was the third discovery. But before I get there, I just like, here's an example of how long this can go on. We had a member in our community. She was in her mid 80s. She had a 70-plus year digestive issue
Wow.
from a family betrayal. She was adopted. They didn't tell her. It was like one of those kinds of things. 70-plus years she had a digestive issue. 2 weeks into working on the problem, which was the betrayal, healed from a 70-plus year gut issue.
Wow. Wow.
It's what happens when you deal with the actual root cause.
Mm. All right, let's dive into that. Thank you for sharing that. And 100,000 people. That's so awesome that you have that kind of information. And I think it's very relieving for people who have been through those things to be like, okay, so all these things I'm experiencing are normal. And I won't say Dr. Silber, Debbie has got some answers. And I love how you put it in your, when I've listened to you speak and on your Instagram and things, you're like, we have and it's predictable. The
Mm-hmm.
healing path is predictable, which
Yeah.
is a huge, I was like, oh, I love how she used that word because it's just like, that shows that you have the evidence, you've done this many times, and you have a path out. And so, obviously, um, people are going to need more support than just
Mm-hmm.
this podcast. And, you have that available for them with it's called what is the name of your institute?
The PBT, as in post betrayal transformation, the pbtinstitute.com.
ThePBTinstitute.com is the website.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And yeah, so there you have every resource imaginable there. But as a general overview, can you share some of this path to healing and what you've discovered in your
Oh
work?
yeah. Happy to share the 5 stages. It's so interesting too because you said that it's so great for some people to know that there's there's a roadmap. I mean, it is predictable. And what's the other side of that is, do you know how much hate I get because healing is a choice? People don't want to
Mm,
hear that because what
mm,
happens to that person who has their story and they're sticking with it?
mhm,
Those people don't like me. It's okay.
mhm,
If and whenever they're ready, we can totally support them. But the whole idea of this is the way it's going to be, I'm stuck with this forever, is entirely a choice.
mm. I want to hang there for a second, okay?
Yeah.
Because I'm curious. Those people who are saying they want to heal,
Mhm.
but it feels almost like they're caught in this limbo of
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm trying, but it almost feels like they're like addicted or dead set on staying in the unhealed place.
Yep.
Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that you will see that in the third discovery. You're going to see exactly
Mm,
where that shows up. But I'm going to
beautiful.
give you this metaphor because it's going to be so easy to see it like this. Here's the difference between resilience and trauma and transformation. Like when it comes to, because an unhealed betrayal, one of the classic signs of an unhealed betrayal is repeat betrayals. The faces change, but it's the same thing, right?
Right.
So this happens over and over and over again. And of course, we just feel like this is the way life is. This is what's meant to
Mm,
be. So this would be an example of, let's say, resilience. You bring yourself out of it enough so that you can handle it again. And using this analogy of, let's say, a really old house. Let's say there's an old house and this house needs like a paint job and you paint. That's resilience. You're restoring it, bringing it back to, right? Let's say it needs a new boiler. You get a boiler. That's resilience, right? You're restoring it. Here's trauma and transformation. A tornado comes by and levels the house. Like a paint job's not going to fix it and a boiler's not going to fix it. But here's the thing, you have every right to stand there at the lot where your house once stood and say, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. You'd be totally correct. You can call all your friends over and be like, isn't this the most horrific thing you've ever seen? They can all agree. And you
Mm.
really can cry and mourn and everything until your last breath. However, if you choose to rebuild your house, you don't have to, but if you choose to, why would you build the same one? There's nothing there. Why not give it everything the old house didn't have? That's the opportunity. That's when
Mm.
you're using your trauma for transformation. That's trauma well served.
Mm. And you made me think too, because I love analogies also. Like, I live in Hawaii right now, but I lived in Salt Lake forever. Moving back, Salt Lake has a lot of earthquake proofing in the buildings,
Mhm,
right? So
mhm.
maybe my mind went to like maybe you live in a earthquakey area, and then you rebuild the house without any earthquake reinforcement or anything like that. It's like maybe this time you might want to build it with some earthquake reinforcement because you learned your lesson.
Yes, yes, exactly. But like I said, the good news is you can heal from all of it. You
Yeah.
can heal, and I'm happy to share the 5 stages if that's what you wanna hear.
I do. And I also want to add, I just want to add to what you said. When I went through, I had kind of three back to back betrayals, like my marriage, and then like I was in Mormonism my whole life, and then found out there was a lot I was never told about that. And that was like the most massive betrayal ever because it was my whole lens on life. And then I left Mormonism, got a nice, narcissistic type relationship because he was my new Mormonism and went bankrupt and lost everything and my self esteem, and so in that
I so need to
aftermath,
get you on my podcast, by the way. We'll talk about that.
okay. In that aftermath of that, I just wanna highlight, like, much how often other people would, like, be like, "Yeah, that's horrible what happened to
Mhm.
you," and they would like, anybody I wanted to, I could tell them my huge, devastating story, and they'd be like, "That's awful. That's awful," and I found the more I stayed in that place, it was just reinforcing over and over, "I am this victim. This is all outside of me." And I'm not saying I wasn't, right?
Mhm,
There were
mhm.
some intentional things that
Yes.
happened, but as long as I stayed and just telling everybody how horrible what had happened to me, and they were like, "Yeah, that's horrible." It reinforced me staying in
Yeah.
that same all of the patterns that brought me into especially
Mhm,
that last place, right? So
mhm,
I just want to really emphasize it's like, yes, it does suck what happened to you so bad. And
mhm.
everyone around you that cares about you is going to be like, "Yeah, that really freaking sucks." But if that's where you land, if
That's
that's
where you stay. That's about
stay,
yeah,
it's just it
exactly.
sucks.
That's why we have so many people coming into the PBT Institute with therapy trauma. These are well-meaning, beautiful, amazing
Mm,
therapists. But if you're not
mm,
highly skilled in betrayal, what's happening is if you're only feeling heard, validated, and understood,
mm.
what you're actually doing is solidifying
Yeah.
your space in that most common place we get stuck. So you'll see this in the
Mhm.
third discovery. So
Perfect.
what this for me was the most exciting, and what was discovered was while we can stay stuck for years, decades, right, like that woman I
Yeah.
mentioned, or
Right.
a lifetime, if we're going to fully heal, and by fully heal I mean those symptoms of post betrayal syndrome that I just shared to this completely rebuilt place called post betrayal transformation, where you rebuild yourself and your life. You're going to go through 5 proven, predictable stages. And what's even more exciting about that is we know what happens physically, mentally, and emotionally at each of those stages. And we know
Mm.
what it takes to move from one stage to the next. That's
Beautiful.
why I'm saying healing's predictable. And I'll happy to
Well,
share.
yeah, I can't
All right.
wait. Okay, we won't make people wait any longer.
Yeah. So, and everybody will know exactly, you're going to have a little, replay of where you've been, and it's all good. First, stage one is before it happens. And if you can imagine 4 legs of a table, the 4 legs being physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, what I saw with everybody, me too, was the heavy lean on the physical and mental thinking and doing, right? And kind of
Mhm.
neglecting or ignoring the emotional and the spiritual feeling and being. If a table only has 2 legs, it's going to be easy for that table to topple over. That's us. That's not saying that if you're neglecting those areas, you will be betrayed. It was just a profile that I saw.
Mm.
Stage 2, shock, trauma, D Day, discovery day. Everybody remembers their D Day.
Right.
This is the scariest of all of the stages, and it's the breakdown of the body, the mind, and the worldview. This is where the person you trusted the most like pulls a mask off and reveals who they've been.
Mhm.
You've ignited the stress response. You're now headed for every single stress related symptom, illness, condition, disease. You cannot wrap your mind around what you just learned. This makes no sense. And your whole worldview has been shattered. Your worldview is your mental model, the rules that govern us, that prevent chaos. It's okay to trust this person. Don't go here. These are the
Mhm.
rules, right?
Mhm.
Like you even said with Mormonism, like there were rules, right? And that was your belief system.
Everything. It was
And
my
then,
entire
right?
lens for life, and then it was just gone, and it
Your
was
worldview, and it's
yeah,
shattered. The
shattered.
bottom, and it's traumatizing because the bottom
Mhm.
bottoms out on you, and a
Mhm.
new bottom hasn't been formed yet,
Mhm.
right? But
Mhm.
think about it. If the bottom were to bottom out on you, what would you do? You would grab hold of anything or anyone. Here was your next relationship to feel
Mhm.
safe and
Mhm.
feel, secure. That stage three, survival instincts emerge. It's the most practical out of all of the stages. If you can't help me, get out of my way. How do I survive this? Who can I trust? Where
Mm.
do I go?
Mhm.
Here's the trap though. Stage three, by far, is the most common place we get stuck. Here's why. Once we've figured out how to survive our experience, because it feels so much better than the shock and
Mm.
trauma we just came from, we think
Mhm.
it's good.
Right.
Right. And because we don't know there's anywhere else to go, we don't
Right.
know about stage four or stage five. Transformation doesn't even start until stage four. But because we
Mm.
don't know there's anywhere else to go, we plant roots here, we park here, and four
Mm.
things happen. One thing is like all those people who say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That's so terrible." Right? we start getting all these small self benefits. We get to be
Mm.
right. We get our story. We get sympathy from
Wow.
everyone we share our story with.
Mhm.
And because we're so unhappy, we that actually feels good. So we plant deeper roots. And now because we're here longer than we should be, now the mind starts doing things like, maybe it's you. Maybe you're not that great, right? Maybe this, maybe that. So we plant deeper roots. And now
Mm.
because these are the thoughts we're thinking, this is the energy we're putting out. Well, like
Mm.
energy attracts like energy. So now we start attracting people and circumstances and new relationships to confirm this is where we belong. Right here is where we join that lame support group, and we will actually sabotage our healing because we found our people.
Mm.
Here's where we will see that therapist. We'll feel heard, validated, understood. We're also being re traumatized, revalidated for staying in that space, and it feels good. Here's where we
Wow.
will stop our healing because we're afraid to outgrow our partner who has no intention of changing,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
It gets worse,
Mhm.
but I'll get you out of here. Because it feels so bad, but we don't know there's anywhere else to go. We're like, this stinks, but I have to get through my day, you know? So
Mm.
right here, we start using food, drugs, alcohol, work, TV, whatever, to numb, avoid, and distract. So we do it for a day, a week, a month. Now it's a habit, 10 years, 20 years. And I can see someone 20 years later and say, that emotional eating you're doing, that drinking, do you think that has anything to do with your betrayal? And they look at me like I'm crazy. They say it happened 20
Mhm.
years ago. All they did was lock themselves in stage three and stay there. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so tell
Yeah.
me about stage 4 and
Yeah.
5 so I can
Yeah.
get a full picture here.
Right. So
Mm.
if you're willing, willingness is a huge word right here. If you're willing to let go of the story, grieve, mourn the loss, bunch of things you need to do, you move to stage four. Stage four is finding and adjusting to a new normal. So here's where you
Mm.
acknowledge I can't undo what happened, but I control what I do with it. Just in that decision, you're starting to turn down the stress response. So you're not healing just yet, but at least you stopped the massive damage that was going on in stages two and stage three. Stage
Mhm.
four feels like if you've ever moved, right? If you ever moved to a new house, office, whatever, you don't have all your stuff there. It's not cozy yet, but it's this sort of hopeful excitement, this newness, right?
Mhm.
And it's sort of the same thing. If you were to move, though, think about it, you don't take everything with you. You don't take the things that don't represent who you're now ready to become. And what I found was there's this one spot as people go from stage three to stage four. If your friends weren't there for you, you don't take them with you. That lame support group, you're done. The therapist who's just revisiting this trauma with you each week, you're done. The betrayer who's not changing, you're done. And people say to me all the time, what the heck is it, me? Yes, you're undergoing a
Mm.
transformation. And if they don't rise, they don't come along. So,
Yeah.
very personal, not necessarily a lonely space, very personal time. in
Mhm.
stage 4. Anyway, when you've settled into this space, you've made it cozy, you've made it kind of mentally home, you move into the 5th most beautiful stage. And this is healing, rebirth, and a new worldview. The body starts to heal, self-love, self-care, eating well, exercise.
Mhm.
You didn't have the bandwidth for that earlier. Now you do. The
Mhm.
mind is healing. You're making all kinds of new rules, new boundaries based on the road you just traveled. And you have a whole new worldview based on everything you see so clearly now. And the 4 legs of the table, in the beginning, it was all about the physical and the mental. By this point, we're grounded because we're focused on the emotional and the spiritual too. Those are the 5 stages.
Beautiful. Thank you. I have a question. Hearing
Yeah.
you talk about how you're focused, before the first big one happens, you're focused more on just, your everyday life, the physical
Mhm.
demands, the mental, and all that. And when you talk about the spiritual and the emotional being kind of left behind a little bit,
Mhm.
what comes to mind for me is like, you know, how do I say this? When I was, married and Mormon and all that, like I felt like I was a very spiritual person, right? And even later on, when I, have my narcissistic relationship, for lack of a better way of putting it, I also felt like I was a very spiritual
Mhm.
person. But what
Mhm.
I resonate with you on that is that I just want to highlight this because it's like, no, I'm a spiritual person, but my intuitive nudges, all of these, like, this is wrong, this needs to be addressed, everything was bottled up inside. I wasn't really giving it the credit that it was due, the stage, the arena, the communication, all of that. And I just kept diminishing it, diminishing it, diminishing it. And when I hear you say that happens before, like, how you're talking about these, you repeat
Mhm.
these
Yeah.
experiences, do you find that continues to happen? Like the spiritual emotional gets pushed back down
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
each
Because
time?
we're not, it's, we know that if we listen to that inner voice, we listen to those nudges we're getting, it's going to create a shakeup that we
Yep.
just don't want to deal with just yet.
Yeah. Great
But
way of
the
putting it.
energy it takes to keep that down is destroying us.
Yeah.
Our highest self knows this is the spiritual part I'm speaking of. So it could be the spiritual part of your religion. People abandon religion completely. They didn't feel like it supported them. They weren't doing anything and became spiritual. And what I'm talking about is sort of that sense of, even though you don't know the reason for it, this is happening for a reason.
Yes.
Maybe they're like with the repeat betrayals. There's, think about it. There's a profound lesson waiting to be learned. Maybe the lesson is, get it already that you are lovable and worthy and deserving. Understand already you need better boundaries in place. Until and unless you get that, you're going to have opportunities in the form of people to teach you.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
even in my, just to close the loop on my story, here it was with my family, and I'm like, what the heck? And then with my husband, for me, for me to do something like enroll in a PhD program, I had never done anything for myself or that big for me.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
changed my whole life and the lives
Mhm.
now, thankfully, of others. So the idea is, when you listen, to that voice, you know, and you
Yep.
don't try to turn it down. You don't try
Yeah.
to quiet it. That's the
Yes.
voice that knows you best. That's the one that we
100%.
we grow into, and we realize, oh wow, you have my back if I only listen.
That's what my coaching company is called Higher Health and Life Coaching. And it's all because I finally started listening to my higher self, to that intuitive, just knowing. Right. And yes, you're absolutely right. Sometimes it comes in and it's like very uncomfortable. It's like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be like a nuclear bomb on my life if I listen to that.
Yes.
That's scary.
Yeah.
But when it just keeps coming and keeps coming, it's like I finally learned it's just trying to make my life better.
That's
That
it.
that's it.
And it sounds, these things sound crazy. And since you have a company that's more spiritually aligned and whatever, I can share this story. I don't share it all the time, but you do. You think you're crazy. You're wondering, is there any reason why this happened? And personally, I'm like, am I the poster child for betrayal, or like, is there a reason for this? And because you feel so alone, you're like, what happened right here? I went to a spiritual coach. She was an intuitive, and I mean, I had never done anything like this, but you want like a direct line. Somehow you're like, I got to figure out my
Yeah.
life. And I walk in, she didn't know me. And before I even sat down, she starts laughing. I'm like, what are you laughing at? She goes, oh my gosh, how you two planned this. I'm like, what? She goes, oh yeah. He needed something so catastrophic to crash and burn so he could be the husband, father, friend he's supposed to be. You needed to crash and burn so that you can
Wow.
heal and really come from this deep place of knowing you're going to have all these books and this whole following around
Wow.
betrayal, and this is going to be, really in service to so many people. I'm like, you're crazy. I got so furious.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
that's the spiritual part where you're like, why in the world would I, go through something like this? Like, for what
Mhm.
purpose? What's the and I'm a highly sensitive empath, and integrity is my highest value. Like, the only way I could, feel good about it, if you want to say good, is taking everybody with me.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I've had a lot of those reflections myself on just looking at my life. Like they're, schizophrenic single mom. Like I just had a lot of stuff, sexual abuse, physical abuse, poverty, neglect. Like, I mean, it was just, and I
Yeah.
look at my life and I look at where I'm at now and I often reflect and I'm like, I do have a deep sense of gratitude and like a deep knowingness that that was all part of my journey for a reason. Even that big body slam, I call it my body slam from the universe, the narcissistic guy, because
Yeah.
I do feel, how you talk about getting stuck in stage 3, and I don't know if anyone
Mhm.
can relate. Like, it was like such a gift. I felt like that after a lifetime of like not thinking for myself and just having somebody tell me what to do, that I didn't end up in a long-term relationship where the guy was just kind of controlling and kind of, got a fix off of me just being this submissive,
Yeah.
people pleaser, because I might have stayed in that forever.
That's
I
it.
don't know if it would have been bad enough for me
Mhm.
to wake up, but this was so bad.
Yeah.
Like, it
Yeah.
was like a total body slam, and I'm so grateful for it,
And I know to other people that sounds crazy. Like, right? And I get it because I was there, right? So it's like, how do you feel grateful for so much pain? It's because look at the perspective.
Yeah.
Look at the perspective it gave you, and it has you questioning everything. And that's part of the rebuild process. Because when I say you are intentionally and deliberately recreating yourself, I mean it. Like the people when you get to stages 4 and 5, the reason why you have undergone this transformation is because you are taking a look at every single thought that comes in your head, every belief you've had, and reassessing. Does this still
Mhm.
serve? No, it's not coming with me. Is this who I want to be? No, I've outgrown that. And what you're doing is really creating a version of yourself that wouldn't exist otherwise. And that's very often not a match for the old person. Now, here's what I did. This is why, to close the loop on my story, rebuilding is always a choice. Whether you rebuild yourself and move along. My family was deeply rooted in stage 3. There was no changing. I was growing, right? Or if the situation lends itself, you're willing, you want to, you rebuild something from the ground up. Remember after that tornado? From the ground up, new with the person who hurt you. And that's what I did with my husband. So not long ago, as two totally rebuilt, transformed people, we married each other again, um, which I never would have done uh, it, if I didn't completely change, and for sure, if he didn't either. Betrayal will show you who someone truly is, but it also wakes them up to who they temporarily became. Not that you have to do anything with it, but there's tremendous potential for something entirely new
Yeah,
if you
and it
want to.
sounds like he obviously must have also gone through quite the journey to be able
Well,
to meet you in that place.
and I think he was the one who told our kids. So if anything
Mhm.
has you wake up and realize what matters, it's losing everyone that matters to you. Like when you have 4 teenagers looking at you like, you did what to mom? You wake up fast.
Wow.
Yeah. Not that, and then rebuilding a relationship with each of the kids, as they are all so different and they all needed things different ways. But that was for him to do if he wanted to. I wasn't going to do that, you know. But That's what healing looks like. True transformation. You don't know what's going to show up. Like when people come to, into our programs, I never say, "Oh, I'm going to make sure the two of you are okay again." Because if
Right.
you are in stage 5 and that person is unwilling to change, you're going to look at them very differently, you
Yeah.
know? And I remember like someone came to me and said, are you able to do this? I know you do this like big mindset stuff and healing from betrayal, but really what I want to do, I want to make it that I'm not bothered by my husband's affairs.
Oh.
Not the past ones. Like he had no intention of changing, and she just wanted me to like flip a switch so that she'd be okay with it. And I'm like, I, I no, that's not what I do.
Yeah. Oh.
Sorry, no,
Oh.
I know. Yeah,
This is such an interesting perspective that you have, because that's not well, I don't know you probably know how often that's the
yeah,
case, but for after a big betrayal like that, you split, then come back together. Can I don't know if you have the words for it, but like I'm curious, like what the differences in dynamic feel
yeah.
like in your relationship now versus then.
Yeah, I can tell you, I've lost loved ones. I've been in the ICU for 11 days. I've had disease. Nothing was as hard for me as
Wow.
rebuilding an entirely new relationship. Hardest thing
Wow.
I've ever done. I mean, that's the reason why I founded National Forgiveness Day. It's like
Wow.
I needed a whole holiday after this. But
Wow.
but it was so hard because you're trusting in this new version of you and trusting in this new version of them. And I remember so many moments where I was like, what, how do I know? How do I know he's changed? And I'm like, but you're completely different. Why can't he be that way too? And it's also,
Mm,
we have a program for the betrayer as well. And
mm,
I see how they're different. They're truly, truly changed.
mhm,
And but you take on everything. You take on, what will people think? I have 2 girls, 2 boys. What will my daughters think about relationships? How will they look at this? What will my sons think about, relationships? How, how will I share this? What, because I know the messages people say, you know, and it was interesting because when we married each other again, like we were done. When we married each other again, I only wanted my kids there, and I did that because I wanted to hear just from them, how
mhm,
they felt. And they each wrote something. And I was blown away because each of them, in their own way, they talked about my strength, my ability to forgive, my
mhm,
belief in second chances, my this, my that, you know. And
mhm,
and it was like, okay, but the beauty was too, when he was out of the house, it was team mom. They were like, "Mom, whatever you need, we got you." And
mhm,
that somehow cleared the space for, all right, let me just heal. I'm just healing just so I'm there for you and my clients. That's it, you know. And we started very, very slowly, and it was interesting because spirituality was my most important, um, really thing that I wanted and I needed.
mhm,
And I remember him saying, within days, he got rid of his fancy car and fancy clothes and all. And the kids were like, "Mom, he's getting weird. Like, I don't know, I don't know who this is." But then he would text, and of course, we had to stay in touch because of the kids. And it's like, what do I read? What do I do? What do I? And I just was like, listen, you never thought this was of any value or whatever, but here's a book, and if you want it, no attachments.
mhm,
And he was sending me like passages and how much he changed, and no, he wasn't saying it. It was all of a sudden, he's joining a hospice thing and feeding the, like helping them.
mhm,
He'd go into New York City and sit with the homeless. I'm like, who is this?
mm.
Um, and he was ready to become someone different.
I really love those examples. Thank you. Because, I'm sure you have seen this a lot too, but it's not uncommon for someone in a, kind of ongoing, on again, off again, unhealthy dynamic. And then one person keeps saying they're going to change or they're trying to change or they make a little teeny effort and then they go back. You're like, no, without me guiding the whole thing. I might throw a book at him or something, but
Yeah,
I'm not trying to become his life coach or his
yeah,
therapist.
yeah,
I just witnessed a new person evolving in front of me. And I think that's such an important share of like
Yeah.
how independent his own healing was that you were observing with like proof in the actions versus him just saying, please, I'm gonna change. I
And
want to change.
and it wasn't about me. That was the thing.
Right.
But that's the
Right.
scary part. And I'll tell you, there were 3 groups in the study who did not heal. One was the group, they had their story, they were sticking with it. Like that was it.
Mm,
Deeply rooted in stage 3. The
mhm,
second group, they were numbing, avoiding, distracting, right? They ran to the
mm,
doctor who put them on a mood stabilizer, anti-anxiety med, numbing in whatever way. It made the day a bit easier, not without a price, right? They didn't heal. Because if you don't feel
mm,
it, you don't heal it. The
mhm,
third group, this was the group where the betrayer had very little consequence. So whether it was out
mm,
of religious reasons, that was a big one, financial fear, whatever it was, they just tried to look the other way. I saw 2 things with this group: a further deterioration of that relationship, and 2, that group was by far the most physically sick.
wow.
Yeah. So, but that's what's happening in the example you just
Mhm,
said.
mhm.
And without those big consequences, there's no big change. And I
Yeah.
didn't do it so that he would change. I did it because, with integrity being so important to me, I couldn't
Mhm,
find a way to make that okay.
mhm, mhm. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I am sure so many people listening to this can resonate with being in stage 3, right? It's kind of this
Mm,
like, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like you're becoming real. Maybe you're like, wow, I was in a relationship with somebody with like a personality disorder, or wow, this was like a really, I didn't realize how unhealthy this was, or
mhm.
there, there's the infidelity, betrayal,
Yeah.
or just, and you're having like all these awarenesses, right? Of like, oh my gosh, and you're making sense of it, and you're kind of
Mhm.
really deeply in that stage 3. How do you come out of that? What are some some counsel you have for coming out of that, like, "This is my story, and I'm sticking with it, and I know how the world works now," and, like, but you're
Mhm.
still really hyper vigilant and really
Yeah.
angry and really triggered. How do you
Yeah.
start to step into that stage 4?
Yeah. It's first of all, you have to realize and recognize that you're in stage 3, because in stage 3, you're living a stage 3 life because you have stage 3 thoughts and you're doing stage 3 actions. And that is the
Mm,
only thing you can ever receive in stage 4. Just like, I mean, 3, but just like when you're in stage 4 thoughts, stage 4 actions, stage 5 thoughts, stage 5 actions. So when people say to me all the time in stage 3, do I stay? Do I go? What do I do? You get yourself to stage 4, because
mm,
it's almost like as you're climbing up this mountain, you can't see things clearly, right? You don't want to make decisions from a place of anxiety, stress, fear, lack. You want to make it from
yeah,
strength and clarity. So
yeah,
you need to move through. So, one of the things I would first, an activity that I would have everybody do, is ask themselves these 4 questions. And I invite everybody to write these down. That's my way of saying write these down. The first one is, am I numbing, avoiding, distracting? If so, how? Like, call yourself on it. See where you're at. Do you walk into the kitchen, you're not the least bit hungry, and there you are, in the cabinets, right?
mm,
Do you try to numb, avoid, distract, right? The second question, what am I pretending not to see?
mm,
It's a big question, Am I
yeah,
pretending not to see there's trouble in this relationship? Am I pretending not to see I hate my job? Am I pretending not to see that health issue that needs my attention? What am I
yeah,
pretending not to see? It's just for you. The third question, what's life going to look like in 5 to 10 years if I play this out? Keep going. The
nice.
same way you're handling or not handling
Mm,
this, play it out 5 to 10 years. You're 5 to 10 years older with the same scenario. How does that look? And the fourth question, how can life look in 5 to 10 years if I change now?
beautiful.
Right? I'm not saying it's easy. Transformation begins when you tell yourself the truth.
Mm, wow. Thank you for that. Okay, so let's talk about how people can receive. I mean, obviously, you have like your TED Talks, and they can go to your website and your Instagram and follow you
Mhm.
there. But in
Yeah.
terms of the PBT Institute, like what offerings do you have for people if they want some more support on this
Oh,
journey?
thank you. Yeah. So if you're the betrayer, we have our rebuild program. I mean, they love that. I work with them. There's no shaming and blaming, but I'm tough
Nice.
on them. And so are our coaches, because we want them to get to the root of what in the
Yeah.
world caused them to have these actions, right?
Can I
So,
just pause really quick on that?
yeah.
Thank you. I've been in like, Facebook groups for divorced people that are just like a support group and all these
Mhm,
things. And, just even in like dating world or whatever you see. And you
mhm.
always see 50 million people that are like, I was cheated on, I was cheated on, I was
Yeah,
cheated on. And
yeah,
there's no one that's like, I cheated, I cheated. There's like
mhm,
so much shame around, and it doesn't just have to be cheating. It could be like gambling or
yeah,
addictions or whatever.
mhm,
But, like, thank you for helping the those people, because obviously, like, if that many people are on the receiving end, that many
mhm.
people are also suffering
Yeah,
in all of this shame and secrecy and self-judgment, and, like,
yeah.
they need help getting out of all of those patterns, so I just wanna say thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and, of course, listen, let's be
Mm.
honest, it wouldn't be everybody who'd wanna even be willing who'd want to or be willing to do a course like this. So,
Yeah,
they're ready. They're ready. They wanna become
yeah,
someone they're proud of,
yeah,
and I admire that.
yeah.
It's so we help them. But anyway, it's our reclaim program, and we have if they people just want our signature course, which literally moves you through the stages, they could do that. If they
Mm,
wanna work with I certify a lot of coaches, the best of the best work within the PBT Institute. They specialize,
nice.
they all are certified in the 5 stages, but they specialize in everything having to do with betrayal. Because at different stages, you need different things. Like in the beginning, your nervous system is completely dysregulated, right? So we
Yeah,
need a somatic
big time.
coach, right?
Right,
When you're
right.
further along, you need a mindset. You need like self growth.
Mhm.
So it's all there. And then
Amazing.
at the highest level, there's working with me at the transform level, and we have our certification program too.
Amazing. Okay, so it's
The
pbtinstitute.com,
the
the pbtinstitute.com.
Yes.
And then sorry, I'm like so locked in with you and I usually have all my notes. I got them somewhere here. So your
No, no, this is
Instagram
great.
is it Dr. Debi Silber or what's your Instagram?
It's Debbie Silber.
Debbie
DEBI. Silber, S
DEBI.
like Sam, ILB like boy, ER.
Nice. Okay. Awesome. Wow. Yeah, we'll link all that up in the show notes. Thank you so much for taking the time and sharing that with us. And I hope that something in this sparked something in someone who might be somewhere on that stage because a lot of us have been through it. And you're so correct. It's so easy to get locked into that stage three forever. And
It
maybe even in sneaky ways. I watch that in myself a lot. I'm like, what about my life did I create right after a traumatic experience, and does that still feel good? Okay.
Mhm.
Like you have to I feel like even in sneaky ways, I have to watch that in myself.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate you just raising awareness on that and providing resources for people to come into that stage 5 more
Oh,
healed,
thanks so
whole
much. And
place.
and I would just say one last thing. If you have to repeat this a million times, it's worth it. Even though it happened to you, it's not about you.
Mhm.
That's the truth.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Inside Out Health Podcast. I hope it's been helpful to you in your journey. If you think that it might be helpful to someone you know, please share it with them. Please share on social media. It really helps me grow the show and reach more people with these amazing messages. And if you could be so kind as to rate the show and possibly even leave me a review, that really helps. So, much thanks in advance if you do that. And yeah, please subscribe if you want to hear more of this type of content. I have lots of amazing expert guests on the way. All right. Thank you.